Ari Berman tells us about dishonest elections, among other things. Check it out. Leave your comments, ding the bell, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. Spend this day in a secure room inside a large federal facility, surrounded by a fence, inside an unscalable wall, backed by another fence, and ringed by 1,000 prison guards. So think of this as a dry run for the next decade. Yeah. And you know, as I was ranting about in the last half hour, the federal government, or any government, a state government, city government, whatever it may be, if they want to take away your home, they have to go to court and prove their case. If they want to take away your gun, they have to go to court and prove your case. But if they want to take away your vote, no problem. We need an absolute right to vote. One of the guys who really understands this, who wrote this brilliant book, Us the Ballot, The Modern Struggle for Voting Rights in America, and is the senior reporter at Mother Jones, Ari Berman, is on the line with us. And Ari, welcome back to the program. It's been a while. Great to have you with us.
Hey, Tom. Good to talk to you again. Thank you.
Thank you. So what's your take on the current state of affairs here? I know you've been reporting on how, you know, a federal judge refused to throw out all those votes, the motor voting votes in Texas. But, you know, there are really large issues at stake here. And also you've got at least 4 justices on the Supreme Court who are saying that they should be able to change the voting rules for a state after people have voted, and the people who are not in compliance with those newly changed rules changed after they voted can have their votes thrown out. In Minneapolis, or Minnesota, I guess, is the best example of this. What's your observation on what's going on in the context of all this stuff?
Well, there's a lot of threats to voting rights right now, Tom. I mean, the good news is that 100 million people voted early. And so I think we're having a smooth election day, relatively speaking, because so many people got their votes in early. But we'll see how many of those votes end up being counted. The Trump campaign has already said they are going to challenge late arriving votes in places like Pennsylvania, even if those are legal votes after state law. So, for example, Pennsylvania, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court said you can have your ballot in 3 days after the election as long as it's postmarked or sent by Election Day. The Supreme Court declined to change that, but basically Samuel Alito said, challenge us after the election, and maybe we'll throw those votes out, which is very, very concerning. The Eighth Circuit basically did the same kind of thing in Minnesota. Trump has already said he's going to go in with his lawyers after the election. So I think if it's a landslide for Joe Biden, none of this is really going to make a difference. But if it's a close election, we can imagine that there's going to be a lot of legal challenges in terms of how votes are counted. And it's just a crazy situation for voters where they cast ballots legally and they could see them still thrown out.
Yeah, it's nuts. I was ranting at the beginning of the hour about the need for a 28th Amendment to establish an absolute right to vote for all citizens who have achieved the age of majority in the United States. What is there's been a lot of talk about this for a lot of years, but it's been kind of bubbling under the surface and really hasn't broken out. That, and the other big thing is the Interstate Compact, the nationalpopularvote.com Interstate Compact, where, if we can get enough states to equal 270 votes to say that they'll direct their electoral votes to vote for whoever wins the popular vote, then, all is good. Although there may be a Supreme Court challenge to that. There's talk about that. But what's the status of establishing voting as a right in the United States? I think we're the only established democracy in the world that doesn't have voting as a right. And of course, it's because, at the beginning, when we were founded 240 years ago, 3/4 of the population couldn't vote. Women couldn't vote. People of color couldn't vote. Native Americans couldn't vote, et cetera. What do you think?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, we need that. We need a fundamental right to vote in this country because we have things that you supposedly can't do. You supposedly can't deny the right to vote to people on the basis of race. You supposedly can't deny the right to vote to women. You supposedly can't deny the right to vote on the basis of age. In fact, those kind of things are done all the time. But we don't have any expansive language in our Constitution that says everyone should have the right to vote except for X, Y, and Z. And I think that's one of the reasons why voter suppression remains so prevalent in America, is because we don't have those broad guarantees of the franchise. Of course, we also have federal judges interpreting existing laws in a very restrictive manner. But I think it's absolutely important. I would also note, Tom, another amazing thing is virtually every state constitution has more expansive language protecting the right to vote than the federal Constitution. So the federal Constitution isn't just behind other countries, it's actually behind all the different states. And I think it's telling that the Supreme Court keeps saying that state legislatures trump state courts, because they know in states like Pennsylvania and North Carolina that have more progressive state courts, they can use that more expansive legislation to protect voting rights, and the Supreme Court doesn't like that.
Yeah, you wonder how long that's going to last. You know, one of the things that the right has been really, really good at, particularly the Federalist Society and the people aligned with them, is taking small, seemingly insignificant cases or cases that, you know, wouldn't get a lot of publicity, arguing them before the Supreme Court and using them as a lever to pry up the corner of established precedent and eventually flip it on its head. Probably Heller is one of the best examples of that. And they're trying to do this with an abortion case that's coming up, you know, shortly. I'm wondering if a couple of women or a couple of African Americans in any state that routinely purges voter rolls, you know, in Georgia, Greg Palast has shown where, you know, several 100,000 people on Brian Kemp's voter purge rolls actually never moved. You know, they're still at their original homes. One of them was the cousin of Martin Luther King, in fact, and she was denied, you know, the right to vote in the 2016 election because of that, because they said that, you know, she was purged. If somebody was to launch a legal challenge saying, I am a woman and my right to vote is established by the, 19th Amendment, as I recall, or 20th Amendment, passed in 1919. I get them mixed up. But anyway, I'm a woman and my right to vote was denied without due process. Or I'm an African American and my right to vote was denied without due process. That would crack open that requirement for due process on the part of the Supreme Court. What do you think?
Well, I think it's an interesting idea. The problem is that every time a voting case goes to the Supreme Court, they keep doing bad stuff. So, I mean, things keep getting worse with the current Supreme Court. I mean, listen, in a recent case in Wisconsin, Brett Kavanaugh cited Bush v. Gore as a precedent when the Supreme Court in 2000 explicitly said, don't cite Bush v. Gore as a precedent. So they're basically going to do whatever they can to try to limit the right to vote, especially with Amy Coney Barrett on there. And so that's why I'm just very, very nervous about how this election is going to play out if it goes to the courts, because I think the courts don't really care about the law at this point, particularly the Supreme Court. They just want to do whatever they can to try to maximize Republican power. So my own view is if Democrats take back the Senate, if Democrats take back the presidency, they should try to pass as much legislation as possible to make it easier to vote by doing things like H.R. 1, the For the People Act, and restoring the Voting Rights Act. But they should try to stay away from the court as much as possible, because I don't see anything good on voting rights or pretty much any other issue coming out of a 6-3 Supreme Court right now.